Introducing tonight a special series called the Ganga Sutra. Headlines the day's initiative to help clean up the Ganga and report on all that the government is doing to ensure that the Ganga becomes as pristine as it has been for millennia. It's a question that evoked emotions across the country and for Indians everywhere in the world. Can the Ganga truly be cleaned? The Modi government has breathed new life into the possibility by creating a full ministry dedicated to bringing India's holiest river back to its long-lost glory. The mission is enormous. The symbolism couldn't be more powerful. For India, it isn't just a spiritual holy grail, but an environmental, geographical and humanitarian imperative. My colleague, Preeti Chaudhary, travelled all the way from the mouth of the Ganga at the Gomukh to the Ganga Sagar, where the Ganga meets the sea, to report on life along the Ganga and capture just how bad things are and what can be done to set them right.
The River Ganga, revered by millions, the lifeblood of northern India. The geographical reality that lends its name to that entire stretch of plains that stretches from the Punjab to Arakan's is today in dire straits. More than just a holy sanctuary for Hindus, but with millions depending on the river for water and basic economic sustenance. The very existence of Ganga is crucial to the well-being of India itself. The Ganga's 2,500-kilometer journey through India is besieged with problems. In its upper reaches, most of its flow is obstructed by the indiscriminate construction of dams and hydropower projects. And when the river enters the plains of India, it is the sewage drains, the rampant industrial pollution and encroachments of its banks. Along with it, tons of spiritual waste flowing into it every day that chokes and haunts the river. Enter Modi in 2014 and the Save Ganga rhetoric takes new life. Once again, the big story, providing fodder for politics and activism. A cause dead for years, suddenly finding new life. Narendra Modi himself and the sudden sparking of socio-religious sentiments sparks off never-seen-before fascination amongst the young and loud.
सरकार और समाज दोनों को साथ-साथ काम करना पड़ेगा.
It is not that India did not try to save the Ganga before. The 1985 Ganga Action Plan will go down in the annals of river conservation as an epic failure. But this time, there is a difference. The people seem to be on board, while a river of funds has been initiated by a government eager to please. The cost is high, not higher than the cost of doing nothing. Crusaders come and go, but the cause usually endures. And this time, as the Ganga flows in the collective enthrallment of a young India, the eternal question that dominates all political motives still remain: will the cause show effect?
As we made our way from Gomukh to Gangotri to Haridwar to right here to the banks of Rishikesh, we met people who have loved this river. We met people who depend on this river for their daily needs. We've met people who've given up everything for this particular river. There is one word that has stuck, and that word is Kismat. If people who we met believe, and they said so to us, that like cities, like countries, like people, even rivers are born with a destiny. And if it is destined for Ma Ganga to survive, then she will. But this time around, the destiny of Ma Ganga would be written by us if we want her to survive.
Preeti Chaudhary now joins me in the studio. 25 days travelling along the Ganga. You trekked, canoed, drove along the river. Describe to our viewers some of the experiences you felt.
Rahul, what we did was, it was a crew of 8 people. So we started our journey 2,500 kilometers wide. It started off at Gomukh, which is about 13,000 feet. This is where you see the Ganga, the purest. We actually drank from the springs because that is where, we saw bottling plants and it was the cleanest, the purest, you'd see it there. From there on, you start climbing down. So from Gomukh, we climbed down all the way to Tehri, and that is where the Ganga is besieged with its own set of problems, which is the river just about 100 kilometers from source is dammed. So what we actually see in Haridwar or Rishikesh is just 15% of the Ganga water, because most of it is in the Tehri Dam, and that's a reservoir, the artificial lake created around it. Having said that, there are 600 dams operational at this point of time, some operational, some under construction, some proposed, which are a great threat to the Ganga. Then you climb down, and as we did, there's the spiritual waste. You actually see physical evidence of the spiritual waste, and that hits you at Haridwar, because all you see is people coming in with their plastic packets filled with flowers, and that's the spiritual waste which is drained into the Ganga. From there on, of course, we traveled to the Tanneries of Kanpur, and that is the biggest problem, because when you're talking about pollutants, it is Uttar Pradesh, the state of Uttar Pradesh, which contributes the maximum, and of course then we trace this path all the way to the Ganga Sagar. But I'd like to, for the benefit of our viewers at this point of time, give a small capsule of what our journey was through this 2,500 kilometers, right from source to sea, where we tracked the course of the mightiest of Indian rivers from Gomukh all the way to the Ganga Sagar. Well, that's the first checkpoint when you come from Gangotri on the way to Gomukh. This is where the Gangotri National Park begins, and this is the point where you have to seek permission. Like we said, only 130 tourists are out every day towards Gomukh, and this is the place where you actually have to go and seek permission to be allowed to trek all the way, the 18 kilometers to Gomukh.
Well, this is it. This is Gomukh, the mouth of this glacier Gangotri, which feeds the mightiest of Indian rivers, the most sacred of them all, River Ganga. Now, if there was a milestone here, it would be 0, because this is where this river originates from. Headlines today, technically our journey begins from right here. This is our first pit stop, where the river originates, and from here on, our journey will continue as we trace this river from Gomukh, where it originates, all the way 2,500 kilometers down to the Bay of Bengal, where it drains into the sea. Along with it, aspirations of many people, the religious sentiment attached to this river, and along with it will also drain sins of millions and millions of Indians who come and take a dip here, hoping that their sins would be washed away. Our first destination, point 0 for Zahir and I. Our journey will end 2,500 kilometers from here, where this river drains into the Bay of Bengal. As we trace the path of this river from source to sea, we know that this is going to be an epic journey. As we attempt to find out as to what it would actually take to revive India's most sacred river. We reach now the temple towns of Rishikesh and Haridwar, where millions throng to the ghats of this very river, some to take that pious holy dip, others to perform the final last rites of their loved ones. As we made our way from Gomukh to Gangotri, to Haridwar, to right here to the banks of Rishikesh, we met people who have loved this river. We've met people who depend on this river for their daily needs. We've met people who've given up everything for this particular river. There is one word that has stuck, and that word is Kismat. If people who we met believe, and they said so to us, that like cities, like countries, like people, even rivers are born with a destiny. And if it is destined for Ma Ganga to survive, then she will. But this time around, the destiny of Ma Ganga would be written by us, if we want her to survive. The fumes are nauseous, the stench, the rancid stench of government apathy, well, this is what it's reeking of. This is actually a state-run, government-run sewage disposal unit where the entire sewage waste of the city of Kanpur is dumped right here into the Ganga. On an everyday level, 300 crore litres of sewage is dumped into the Ganga across its 2,500 kilometre stretch. 10% of that is dumped right here in the city of Kanpur. And this behind me is a classic example of that. A river that is turned toxic in Kanpur is once again celebrated as a goddess in Allahabad. But the goddess today is clearly in distress. Its venerated waters, seen as an unconditionally forgiving, loving mother, today is struggling to stay alive. Losing the Ganga, millions across India will lose economic sustenance. Millions across India will lose a spiritual mother. Millions across India will lose a final resting place. The largest delta in the world, a precariously poised ecosystem, the Sundarbans is a confluence delta of three rivers, the Ganga, the Brahmaputra and the Meghna, which comes in from Bangladesh. Today, this delta is also under threat primarily because it is precariously poised on a very delicate balance, that of saline water and fresh water. And for the last 20 days, as we lived the Ganga story, we spoke to the people directly interlinked, woven with the river. And there was one word that stuck, and that word was Kismat. The people we spoke to believe that like individuals, like cities, even rivers are born with a destiny. And if it is in the destiny, in the Kismat of Ma Ganga, then she will be saved. Knowing very well, this time around, it would be they themselves who would be writing the destiny of their very own Ma Ganga.
This is a journey of a lifetime. You can watch Preeti's travels along the Ganga starting Monday at 8 p.m. Preeti, on the basis of your journey and your experiences, what do you think the Modi government should really be doing to try and clean up the Ganga?
Well, it is to try and clean up the Ganga, Rahul. That's what they should be doing. So there are a lot of funds which have been allocated. To case an example, 100 crores been allocated for beautifying ghats. You really don't need that. The noises that they've been making, Nitin Gadkari talking about pledging crores of money to make a channel between, say, Kanpur to Haldia. Now, you don't need that. What you need is to clean the river. What you need is no hydropower project which they want restarted, which of course Uma Bharati is contesting, but the government in case in point wants about 30 hydropower project to be started. So you don't need to do all of that. All you need to do is clean the river and not beautify the river, which is what most people are saying because they want to make it look beautiful. That's not what the Ganga needs. It needs to be clean, and that is to let the flow of the river. So that is, if there's one takeaway out of it, to let the river flow.
And there's no point in just building artificial ghats and embankments. What you need to do is let pure water, clean water flow through the Ganga. And if the government can ensure that, it will probably be Prime Minister Modi's greatest service to the nation.